Hey everyone, this is Theo, coach of the Beantown Binacles. A few of us are here, and we decided to get a video going over the team transactions and just an analysis, a brief analysis on what we think were good changes, what we thought were bad changes, or lateral moves. And today I am joined by a couple fellow admins of the VBA. We have Rhett, coach of the Pittsburgh Steel Types, and also we have Toast with us, the coach of the Worcester Stunfisks. And I thank you guys for joining. So the first team up is actually my team, the Beantown Binacles. On our screen, we have the final team on the right hand side, and we have the season transactions that occurred for my team that I placed. The transactions were due by the time this video comes out. 3 transactions total for the whole entire team as the maximum, and I decided to go with all 3. And I'll bounce it over to you guys. So what do you guys think of each change?
I gotta say, overall, I think the changes are pretty good. I was pretty scared of the Mudsdale when I was planning for your team. I especially like the Rotom Wash over Latios, though, because while Latios has a lot of options, it definitely felt a little underwhelming in the battles that you had it in, and Rotom Wash is just always reliable.
Yeah, that was one of the big reasons why I made that change was whenever I was building with Latios, it felt like Latios, although it has a base 130 special attack, I always had to give it a damage enhancing item like a life orb or something to make it actually effective. Uh, and it was also, even though it has a pretty large move pool, it still felt very limited when I was building with it, which is surprising because I drafted it for its complexity and all the options that it has in its move pool. But yeah, it didn't turn out that way, and that's why I made that change.
I'm gonna be honest. Trash. No, I'm kidding.
Sounds about right.
No, the Mudsdale didn't really make sense for your team because you don't really have any hard Trick Room setups other than Whimsicott setting up Trick Room, which
Right.
is going to be hard to get off in the first place. For the Latios Rotom, it does make sense. I actually had the same issue with Azelf. I love Azelf. It was great for what I wanted, but didn't fit everything I needed. But it makes sense because Latios and Azelf both kind of have that similar problem. And the Obstagoon for the Butterfree, I understand the Butterfree, like with the Rage Powder, you get Sleep Powder and all that stuff, and that kind of gives you a utility that's kind of scary and kind of could force people to use that safety goggles. But Obstagoon also offered that like Snarl, Parting Shot, like kind of some ways to lessen the damage. So in a sense, it's kind of a support trade-off for another support trade-off. Butterfree, both of them can be kind of flimsy in one regard. Bobsgoon kind of has that way of lowering people's defense, so that kind of makes it risky to attack into it. I mean, overall, I do like the Rotom. I think is the best change. Haxorus is really good. I think that it does fit in with the offensive nature of your team, and the Butterfree I do think kind of gives that support that you need a little bit more for the frailer mons.
My reasoning, since I'm in the video, so Haxorus was changed, and I agree. I switched out Mudsdale because my team was not slow. It wasn't meant for Trick Room, and it was kind of a last second panic pick for a ground type. So the Haxorus and Latios were kind of in combination because I wanted to have a dragon type on my team, and Haxorus gave me that physical coverage as well versus the rest of my top tiers, which are mostly special. So overall, you guys think I did okay?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Change.
Right. You're keeping this in the video, right?
Well, we'll find out.
No, I think keep it.
All right, so let's go to our next team, the Boston Blisseys, coached by the fellow Lady Grimer. This is her first season with pretty serious VGC, serious and fun VGC. And I thought she drafted really well for her team. And the only change she made this season was switching out Suicune for Togekiss. What did you think about that change?
Great change. Togekiss, I honestly couldn't believe when it came back on the market. She was smart to snap it up. I know that her team was planned out pretty extensively ahead of time. She basically had a list of mons that she was going to pick, and she went down the list and grabbed them. And fortunately, there wasn't too much interference from other people drafting. So I think for the most part, she got exactly what she wanted. But I think the switch to grab Togekiss makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
have the
I
option.
agree. Yeah, I mean, I think Togekiss is just a much better Pokemon than Suicune. Has a lot more options. Can be run as a support mon, or run as an offensive mon, or both at the same time. Suicune acts as a potential speed control with Icy Wind and Tailwind, but it's also mostly there for like as a bulky water type. But she already has a bulky water type in Gastrodon, who is really good and helps the rest of her team with her Rhydon, her Charizard, and her Torkoal. And Togekiss with the redirection, I think, is huge for this team. What about you, Kyle? Or Toast?
It doesn't matter. People see my videos. No, I actually agree. Honestly, like, I don't know if you guys remember season 0. I didn't make any changes that season.
Mhm.
I didn't have to make any changes. I didn't feel like I had to make changes. And she does have a very well-rounded team. I mean, the Suicune I do kind of see as like being a good mon in itself, but Togekiss again does offer that redirection, which her team could make some really good use out of. I mean, she already has the lightning redirection from the Rhydon. And it's just going to help protect like any of these other mons out there, like Helios, which is going to be a little bit softer when it comes to physical defenses, and it's going to be able to eat up the attacks that Helios isn't going to want to take. I mean, overall, I do think it was a good snag, and very surprising it went back up on the market.
I was also very surprised. Yeah. I'm sure everyone else was too.
A little upset that I made my switch earlier before that happened.
yeah. I mean, I think we all knew Togekiss wasn't going to be on the free agency market. For very long.
There's another mon that happened with as well, which I will get to.
Yes, we'll get to that. But yeah, overall, do you guys think this was well? It sounds like it. You guys think it was a positive change, right?
She loses she loses a tailwind setter, but that's about it.
Yeah,
and it's not a fast tailwind setter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing about this team that struck me when I first saw it was how familiar it was. Because it looks a lot like the team that I was running.
Yeah, actually, that's right.
No Weezing, no Weezing.
Yeah.
No Weezing. I got to Weezing before she could.
Actually, yeah, it was very similar to your team, Rhett, from season 0. So I think we're all in agreement this was a really good change. So let's go to our next team.
I disagree.
So our next team is none other than our parish trapping extraordinaire, the Fifth Leaf, coach of the Central Massachusetts Clovers. And his 2 season transactions were dropped Runeragus for Gengar, free agent, and he dropped Dugtrio for Wobbuffet for free agency. Toast, what do you think of these changes?
So when looking at the Dugtrio for the Wobbuffet, you'd think, okay, you're losing that speed. Obviously, he wanted the Arena Trap for the Parish Room, but he gets another Shadow Tag user. And Wobbuffet, you'd think, okay, maybe doesn't do a lot on the field. It doesn't counter Mirror Coat. I think it gets Tickle or Copycat or Encore. That's it. But the thing is he can actually trap someone in with that Wobbuffet and Dynamax it. And that thing's bulky when it's Dynamax, which could end up being really useful for like snagging people in. Because it's going to take a lot to get through it when it's Dynamax. Runeragus for Gengar. I personally love Runeragus a lot, but it makes sense for his team.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a good change. The Runeragus for the Gengar for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned the Wobbuffet Dynamaxing, because we haven't seen anyone Dynamax using a max Mirror Coat or a max counter yet. But those turn into max moves.
Yeah, and I mean they're weak. They're base 100, but it is an option too, and that'll give them fighting and psychic.
That's right.
And again, a very, very bulky way to trap people in. But I think they're a good change. They make sense for his team.
Yes, I agree. How about you, Rhett?
This is just such a cool team all around. And I agree. These are really, really great changes. Wobbuffet just isn't going to die. And Gengar, it's nice to have that extra Parish Songer, and it's got the speed and utility to do a lot of different things that I think will be really helpful for him.
Yeah,
also gets Icy Wind.
It does get
which
Icy
gives
Wind,
some speed control another way.
Yeah, and the other big thing is that it's also one of the fastest Perish Song users as well. It's much more reliable to get the Perish Song off with a Gengar versus trying to get it off with Primarina or Lapras, who might get KO'd during that same turn. The only downside I could see for switching out Dugtrio for Wobbuffet is that Dugtrio, although is super frail, it does have a lot more options versus Wobbuffet, but Wobbuffet, for its job, it does its job very well.
And the other thing about Dugtrio, though, is that he already has a ground type that he's relying really heavily on
the
Gmax Sandaconda, and it's just not great overlap in typing.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
The Dugtrio did offer, though, the Memento and like Sucker Punch for proc and weakness policy if he did want to go like competitive Gothitelle to throw someone off, or even with the Gengar. The other thing is too, though, I would say with Gengar over Runerigus is he does get Imprison and Trick Room, which is going to be something that's useful as well for his team. Again, though, I do think it's overall a very positive change in the direction that he was taking the team in the first place.
Agreed. Our next team is a coach from Season 0, very good guy. That is our buddy Joe Crabshack, coach of the Corpus Christi Krabbys. His first transaction, which was the big surprising one, which threw us kind of all off guard and we weren't really sure about, but the Togekiss for Comfey was the first transaction. The second transaction was Palossand for Guzzlord. And finally, his most recent one and final transaction was Jellicent for Swoobat. And let's start talking about the first change, which is the mind-blowing one, which was Togekiss. He dropped Togekiss for Comfey. Rhett, what are your thoughts on that one?
That was a mistake, man. That was not the move. Like Comfey offers. Like, Comfey is really good, right? It can proc weakness policy with Draining Kiss. It can use Floral Healing to keep people on the field, but it's just not as strong as Togekiss in a draft format, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. The Comfey, I understand why he made the Comfey switch, clearly for weakness policy, another weakness policy procer for Dragonite, but he does already have a pretty reliable one in Ninetales. It does get past Follow Me, and it gets past Redirection since Comfey has such a high base speed versus the Redirection Pokemon. Yeah, and it outspeeds a lot of Fake Out users as well. So maybe that was his thought process. And obviously priority Floral Healing is ridiculous. But overall, I agree with you, Rhett. The Togekiss, I think he definitely should have kept that just because it's such a reliable Pokemon. What about you, Toast?
Again, I do kind of agree Togekiss would probably have been better stay. But the other thing I do want to note too is its signature move with Comfey gets a boost, and I think it heals almost 50% or almost full.
Oh, that's true.
In grassy terrain, and he has the Gmax Rillaboom. So part of me says that it's not absolutely the worst idea. It makes sense on paper. Now, again, I do agree the Follow Me redirection is kind of useful, but that can also be tricky to use because it's kind of easy to see when a Follow Me is going to come, and then if someone has the proper lead, which, Dragonite's weak to ice. Hey, Plex. How you doing? We're going to just kick you out.
We're recording
it was bound to happen, right?
It was. All right. Thanks for stopping by, Plex.
Later. All right.
Well, everyone, that was Plex.
Yep.
You wanted to stop in. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so Togekiss, Dragonite, and Rillaboom all have the same weakness of Ice type. So you kind of drop that weakness with getting rid of the Togekiss. So in a sense, that makes sense too. Because what are you going to redirect a nice type into Togekiss just to protect Dragonite and still lose Togekiss? I mean, I don't think it was exactly the wrong choice for his team because that is a very, now he has Guzzlord too and Swoobat. He has a lot of ice weakness, so I think kind of losing that ice weakness does kind of help him out a little bit because he did have Palisand prior to the Guzzlord. I don't, Togekiss, I like it a lot, but at the same time, I understand Comfey. It still gets Ally Switch, which kind of does the same thing.
Yeah. I think you bring up good points. The Floral Healing and Grassy Terrain is actually pretty good synergy because it does recover 75% versus the 50%, which is huge. That's a massive amount of health, especially with a Dynamax Pokemon or Maxmon. The healing roughly 35% is ridiculous. But let's go on to the next trade here with the Palisand for Guzzlord. I'm not exactly sure what the trade was for. It does give him another ice weakness though. He loses an ice weakness with Togekiss, but then he gains it back with Guzzlord. And I guess Palisand is the same.
Yeah, it was a trade for.
Also has an ice weakness though.
So. Yeah. And then Palisand is also a Trick Room setter, which he will have gotten rid of, and then
he picked up with Comfey. And Swoobat.
Right. Yeah, so this is more of a, so far to me, besides the Togekiss, that seems like a pretty lateral move, Palisand to Guzzlord.
Well, it gives him a dark type, which he had a ghost type already with Chandelier. So to me, it's kind of a better trade because he had 3 ghost types prior. And it's a big, bulky, fat one, and it's going to get the weakness policy proc as well from Ninetales, which you can still proc under Trick Room.
Yeah.
And then with Aurora probably will live quite a bit. Do better than Hydreigon. Surviving any fairy move.
Yeah. Right. What did you think about the Palisand to Guzzlord?
To me, I don't know. I looked a lot through what Guzzlord can do. And it hits reasonably hard. It didn't really scare me, but then when I was looking at his team, I was looking at it through the lens of having Tapu Fini on hand.
That's true.
That goes a long way towards making Guzzlord not look scary.
Yes, agreed. And his final change, which was made effective week 6, I believe, was Jellicent for Swoobat. Swoobat does give him other options, other speed control options with Tailwind. It gets Speed Swap as well. And it gets all sorts. It actually gets Trick Room too, if folks don't know, and it gets Imprison. Do you guys like that trade?
I am personally. I think the Jellicent would have been better to keep in that situation. I like Swoobat a lot. I like the fact that you can Simple Beam a Dynamax Mon, which can double your boost. The Speed Swap is also something that's really nice. You can run Simple on it as well, proc weakness policy, and it's really fast, and you can start running through things. But it's a difficult mon to use. It's really frail, can die really easily. And you kind of know what tricks are coming from it, where Jellicent's going to be more of that reliable, bulky water type with Water Absorb, Curse Body, and Dragon Pult's only on one team. It's not like it's on every team. So to get a mon that can actually deal Jellicent reliably, other than Cinderace and Dragapult, you're not looking at too much. So to me, I think Jellicent would have probably been better to keep in that situation. But I do like a lot of the options. I think Swoobat's a really fun Pokemon to use, so I don't disagree fully, but I think Jellicent would have been better.
Is actually a step up because in a lot of ways, Jellicent is, as good as it is, it's covering a lot of similar ground to Chandelure in terms of being a ghost type Trick Room setter, and Chandelure doesn't have the bulk that Jellicent has, but it has a little more offense. It just feels to me like bringing in Swoobat gives him a little more breadth in his team.
Yeah, and I think Chandelure, I agree, it's very similar to Chandelure, the Jellicent in certain aspects. Chandelure does have that fire immunity, Jellicent has the water immunity. Which fire immunity might look a little better for his team comp as far as like his top tiers go, and also with Ninetales and Sandslash as well. Overall, For me, I think that these trades in total overall was probably negative, in my opinion. That the team got slightly worse, but he's been playing the team really well, and he has a good record and a strong shot at making the playoffs. And I guess we'll see how he plays the Swoobat as his last change. What do you guys think overall?
I think it's more neutral. I think the Guzzlord Palace Land, I think Guzzlord's positive there. The Comfey to me is more neutral. And I think the Jellicent Swoobat is, I personally think it's a little bit more negative because you lose that water spout pressure under Trick Room. Because, I mean, he could have easily set Trick Room with another Mon, then bring Jellicent in after and water spout.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a scary option right there. It is also another thing that's going to be ice. Water's resistant to ice too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he loses another resistant type to ice for an already weak to ice team. So to me, I think that's negative. But again, that's just my opinion on it.
Right,
I think this Woobat is, I like it. I think it's fun. I think it offers a lot of, as Rhett said, breath. But to me, I think it's more neutral change across the board than negative.
I would kind of agree that it's neutral across the board.
Well, let's go to our next team, the Detroit Dragonites, and this is one of the scariest teams. I think is one of the scariest teams in our league right now, with their team comp, and they have only made one transaction this season, and that was Scrafty for Sylveon, and it was very early in the season as well. This change, I do like this change. He loses an Intimidate user, but he has an even better one in Landorus Therian, and Sylveon it just packs such a punch. It gives him an option to proc weakness policy on his Dragapult as well. But yeah, in my opinion, I really like this change. How about you guys?
For me, I think the main thing that he's losing out on here is Fake Out. Otherwise, I think it makes a lot of sense. It feels mostly lateral to me. I would miss the Fake Out.
Yeah,
I mean, he has two other fake out.
Yeah, he has the Raichu and the Lopunny.
Oh yeah, of course he does. Never mind then. Yeah, he doesn't need 3 fake out users.
It is nice to have 3 fake out users, though. I wouldn't mind that.
I only have one.
Nice, but you need it.
What about you, Toast?
I want to keep my I'm against audio next for this upcoming week, so I'm keeping my opinions.
That's fine by me.
Silent. Yeah. I don't want to give any audio any help against me. I'm already desperate enough.
Okay, so we'll discontinue your opinion on this team. And for me, I think overall, I think this was a good change. It's such a hard hitter, and you have to prep for the Sylveon as well. Like it just hits too hard, and it has that weakness policy proc. So for me, I think it is a good change overall. Let's go to our next team. Our next team belongs to Senpai, who is coach of the Florida Feraligatrs. And Senpai's team made 3 transactions throughout the season. His first transaction was Celesteela for Metagross, and I think this was, at least to me, it was comparable to the Togekiss switch for Comfey. This was a big switch, and it blew up in the chat a little bit as well. What do you think, Rhett, about this?
So this is another Mon that I was surprised to see show up back on the market for someone to be able to pick up. I wasn't surprised that somebody grabbed it. It plays really different from Celesteela, and I think it generally fits in a little bit better with the rest of what Senpai's doing here. So I think it makes sense to make that switch.
Yeah, I don't know if I thought Metagross, I don't know, in my opinion, I don't think Metagross fit in too well with the team. I prefer Metagross is so good. So I'm really surprised it got dropped. But Celesteela has the option to, run physical or special as a bulky steel type, whereas Metagross is very one note. I personally like Celesteela over Metagross for his team comp. What about you, Toast?
I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I see a couple things with Metagross that I ran very similar with a Tentacruel.
Oh, right.
And
Yes.
that that right there is reason to be afraid of the Metagross. It offers a lot of power with I'm just gonna say it, bulldozing. It has clear body, so you're gonna slow everything else down. Probably below Metagross. It's got that base 70 speed. I think it was a good pickup. I don't think he has any other psychic type on his team, so I gave him. Oh no, it's Articuno.
Well, he didn't have
But it gives him a
Articuno
physical
for
psychic type,
a
which is
week.
yeah, that's fair.
Where he did not have it.
Yeah.
It is not as bulky, but I don't know. I think it offers different play style, which can be quite scary, especially with that clear body.
Yeah, that's a good mention with the Bulldoze clear body option. The thing is, I think he has. Does he have a Bulldoze user? Just Dreadnought Hydreigon?
Thwacky.
Thwacky, I don't think
Thwacky.
gets Bulldoze. Pretty sure.
Does it not? I know Rillaboom does, and I use it all the time because Bulldoze is weakened in grassy terrain, so it does less damage to you.
Yeah, so Thwacky does not get Bulldoze.
I'm
so
gonna look it up right now.
His fastest Bulldoze user is actually Hydreigon. So I guess Hydreigon and Metagross do complement each other pretty well. As a Levitate user to cover the ground weakness, and then the Psychic and Dark type to kind of cover each other as well. Yeah. You may have changed my mind on that, because Hydreigon is still a very fast Bulldoze user to get that. Yeah. And Senpai, or the Florida Feraligatrs, their second change was I'll group the second and third change together. So he dropped Galarian Articuno for Regieleki. Regieleki was another one that we did not expect to be in the free agent pool during the season. And then the following week that took effect, he actually dropped his Regigigas for the Articuno Galar again, the Galarian Articuno again. So he dropped Articuno, picked up Articuno. He couldn't live without that Articuno. What do you guys think of those changes?
Senpai deserves the reward for the least efficient team changes in the league. I mean,
I'm gonna agree with that one. That was had me confused. I think I remember even saying in admin, I'm like, what just happened?
It was just a roller coaster of emotions, right? I personally, when that happened, I started looking at Galarian Articuno as I like it as a Pokemon. But then the other team change occurred, so I went from looking at Articuno Galar and thinking how it could work into my team, and then immediately dropping that idea. Yep.
Definitely, he could have. I mean, he would have never gotten Regieleki if he dropped Weezing Galarian. But I feel like Weezing Galarian now is kind of the odd man out on his team because he doesn't have that Regigigas to support.
Yeah.
That's really, like, I think he would have had to have dropped that. He would have had the Regigigas still. He would have had the Articuno still.
Yeah, and so, I think having Regigigas on the team with the Weezing, even if you don't use it, it forces your opponent to prep for it. So it may have been a better idea to leave the Regigigas on the team and pick up another Pokemon in a different tier that is closer to what he's hoping to do with Articuno.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, like, because if he wanted the Regieleki, though, he would have had to get rid of the Gigas at least. But then he could have gotten rid of the Weezing next time. Because I don't know how much the Weezing really offers other than being a fairy type for his team.
Yeah.
I know the neutralizing gas is good, but
yeah, I think
Rhett, you're more the expert with Weezing, so if you want to
Rhett, our local Weezing expert.
is really, really useful in a lot of situations. Anytime you're going up against somebody who has a team that's really ability dependent, like a sun team or a terrain focused team or anything like that. Anytime you're going up against somebody that really relies on their abilities, Weezing can do the work. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that not having Gygus means that Weezing should go, but I do definitely agree that it might have been worth it to hold on to the Gygus Weezing combo just to make people think about it in team prep, even if you never planned on bringing it again.
I'm curious to hear your two opinions of whether you thought the whether the changes made an overall positive change to the team or a negative change to the team.
I mean, I'll say this outright: the choice to get rid of Gigas actually affected the choice of one of the Mons I picked because I knew I was going up against him in the future for team change. Because I was watching what Senpai was picking, and the moment he got rid of Gigas, I'm like, oh, I don't really need this Mon anymore. I ended up not switching it anyway, but it did affect my choice there a little bit because it was one of the reasons why I was holding on to one Mon.
Okay. How about you, Rhett?
Yeah, I think this is neutral. You could argue that I think Gygus and Lecky is like a fairly neutral trade. I think Metagross is maybe better for this team than Celesteela, but you could certainly argue it either way. And the Galarian Articuno for Galarian Articuno is about as neutral of a trade as you can get. So
yeah.
Neutral.
I think the issue I have with the Metagross is that it's another ground weakness on his team. He has a lot of ground weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, with that, he can also throw Levitate on Weezing, and someone might not expect that.
That's true.
So I mean,
that's true.
He has what, 2, 3? 3. It's not worst.
If I wasn't able to get Tapu Fini, I was planning on picking up the Galarian Weezing to get access to both Misty Terrain and the neutralizing gas. And I think having the terrain setting ability with the Galarian Weezing is an interesting idea that he hasn't really explored yet.
Our next team is our fellow admin, Mr. Bubble Hulk, coach of the Gardner Guzzlords, and his Gmax Hatterene hard trick room team that he's got here. He's the only hard trick room team, I believe, in the whole league. He has made 2 transactions this season. His first change was dropping Salamence for Indeedee female, and his second change was dropping Regieleki for Pheromosa. And the Regieleki drop was very surprising. In my opinion, I actually liked it because Pheromosa does give him speed swap, a super fast speed swap, which is really dangerous on a trick room heavy team as well. And I also really like his change with the Indeedee female. It's a classic pair between the Hatterene and the Indeedee, setting up psychic terrain, getting the expanding forces off, and getting the size spam. What did you guys think about these 2 changes?
My initial impression looking at the Regieleki for Pheromosa drop was that was going to be a negative. But right after he did it, I started digging into his team because that was the week that we were playing, was the first week he had Pheromosa. And adding Pheromosa made my prep against him just so much harder. And it forced me to iterate a bunch of different team comps, try and find one that I thought might actually be able to beat the Pheromosa. So I actually think that was an extremely positive change despite how strong Regieleki is on paper.
Yeah. I think Regieleki's only way of speed control is Electro Web, which drops the opposing team's Pokemon by one stage. But with a team this slow, having your opponent drop one stage of your speed doesn't necessarily mean your Pokemon, his side of the field will still outspeed with the opponent at -1. Pheromosa allows that instant outspeed on turn 1 with a base speed of 151. So let's say he gets that Hatterene in there with a Pheromosa, and he just... Well, actually, does that work? Hatterenes with speed swap, or does Magic Bounce not allow that? I mean, but even Pheromosa getting the base 151 speed onto a Glastrier in one turn is wild versus, you know, an Electro Web giving the opponent a -1 speed drop. You know, most of his Glastrier is not going to outspeed that Pokemon anyway at -1.
It should. It's a horse.
The best thing Regieleki could do for his team would be set screens.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad. I mean, Glacier is bulky. Throw an AV thing on that, and that thing's not going down.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, though, actually the week he made that change, I was on ladder, and I went against that same combo, Glacier Pheromosa, and it caught me off guard quite a bit. And it was the first thing, the moment I saw him pick that up, that was the thing that hit me, was that speed swap. The Indeedee for the Salamence, I mean, he kind of loses out in Intimidate. So, I mean, he did kind of have a pseudo-fast mode with Regieleki, Salamence, and Hitmonlee prior. And Blastoise is kind of decent. But I do think the Indeedee fits his team a lot better because he is going for that hard Trick Room. I would have liked to see Salamence be used because I think it could have been definitely very interesting.
Yeah. Salamence is such a cool mon. It would have been cool to watch it in action, see what it does this in this format.
Glacier and Salamence kind of like cover for each other. So if he wanted to swap in Glacier into an ice move for Salamence, he would have been okay to do that. And not take really any damage. So it's like he could have stalled out a Dynamax turn with that. But again, I think the Indeedee, he gets to follow me, the Psychic Terrain. It really does work out better.
Well, by the way, looking at Cerebi, Speed Swap is not blocked by Magic Bounce. So that does work.
That's a big plus. All right. Yeah, so...
Don't use that against me.
I think, are we all in agreement? I think these are both very positive changes for the overall makeup of this team.
I just think I would have liked to see him use his third change to drop Fungus for something else, because it has too much overlap with Indeedee in terms of what it can do on the team.
I mean, the Spore, though. He does get access to that Spore, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, Spore is
something. Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, I think for those that don't know, Bubble was part of Season 0, and he did have Fungus on that team as well. Season 0 used was it Series 6 rules? Series 6 or Series 5 rules?
It was Series 5.
Series 5. So it was a very limited format with Pokemon that aren't as offensive before the legendaries were introduced. So Fungus definitely shined that season. But I think it is definitely struggling this season with so many more meta-defining mons available.
Agreed.
All right, so why don't we go to our next team? Our next team is actually the H-Town Houndooms, coached by WTF Mang. They're doing very well. They are doing very well this season. They are currently ranked number 2 at the time of this video, with just 1 loss, I believe. They also made 3 transactions this season. The first transaction was dropping Dracloak for Maractus. Second transaction was dropping Decidueye for Sneasel. And his final transaction was dropping Oranguru for Bronzong. Rhett, what did you think about his changes? Their changes?
take a page out of Toast's book. I play them next week, so I don't want to talk too much about what I see here.
No worries, no worries. How about you, Toast?
I agree. No. The first thing is like the Dracoloak for the Maractus does give him that water protection with the Storm Drain. Although I don't know really too much on his team that's really afraid of water. Just looking at it very quickly. Colossal?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So it does make sense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense then. Like, gives you that protection once your setup is gone. The Decidueye for Sneasel. Okay, yeah, it actually makes sense because that's probably how he's setting up the Colossal with like a Surf or something other than Water Shurikens.
Yep.
That'd be the first thing I notice. And then the Oranguru for Brazong. That I like Brazong a lot. I like Oranguru a lot. It makes sense to go with the Brazong, I think, overall, although Oranguru only has the one weakness, the dark typing. I have used Oranguru on ladder myself to a bit of a success. Instruct is always nice, although I never used it. They both get the ally switch. I don't know if Brazong gets Brutal Swing, but I know Oranguru does, and he might have been able to use that with like the Tapu Lele in a sense. But I mean, he has Sneasel for stuff like that too.
And Bronzong does not get Brutal Swing.
It's bulkier. Yeah. Then it does get Body Press or whatever the defense move is. Yep. The one that goes off the defense. So I do think Brazong's. I think mainly this is. I'm gonna just say right now. I think this is mainly positive.
Yeah. Well, we've seen the destruction of that Gmax Colossal.
Yeah.
The H-Town Houndooms did play on a recorded game recently, and I mean that Gmax Colossal is just such a threat with the max move, and he has a way to protect it with the Maractus, like you mentioned, Toast, which I think was a good change. I mean, Dracloak is a good support mon in my opinion because of its speed, but Maractus is just purely support. It's a purely good support for that Colossal. And then I also agree with the Sneasel change. Sneasel is probably one of the best weakness policy proccers for Colossal. It gets inner focus, so you cannot fake it out, and it's almost guaranteed to get the Surf off. So I think that was a good switch. I think Oranguru, I agree with you. It's probably positive, but I do think that was a lateral change. Overall, though, I think these two changes, at least for the Maractus and the Sneasel, were good for his overall team makeup.
Yeah, and the other two things, I think he was probably using the Dracoloak prior for setting up like the steam powered by using like Will-O-Wisp from Dracoloak into Colossal, which is nowhere near as reliable as the Sneasel, but neither one of them could be faked out. He does have the Kangaskhan with Scrappy, so no one's going to fake it out. So that makes sense originally, but Sneasel is definitely better.
Yeah. Yeah, overall, good changes, positive changes to the makeup, I believe. So let's go on to our next team. Our next team are the Hammerlocke Kings, coached by Popo's Pokemon. He has made 2 transactions this season. The first transaction made actually before even Game 1 started, I believe. It was already put in to take effect on Week 2. That was dropping Gengar for Naganadel. And his last or second season transaction was dropping Kartana for Celesteela. Rhett, what do you think?
So in the draft analysis video, we already knew he was dropping Gengar for Naganadel at that point, and I said that I thought it was actually trading down a little bit, but I have to say, having gone up against a Naganadel, I'm not sure that I still feel that way, because it definitely put the nails in my coffin.
Yeah, I think Naganadel and Gengar run very similarly, both super fast offensive poison types. I think they're both really good Pokemon. I personally prefer Gengar over Naganadel, but I also haven't gone up against the Naganadel yet. The Gengar is not as fast, but does hit harder and has a lot more support options. So to me, when I look at it, I think it'd be harder to prep against a Gengar versus a Naganadel. But you did go against it, so I trust your word on that. What about you, Toast?
I do do agree. I do think kind of Gengar is better in a lot of senses. I mean, Naganadel does get Helping Hand. It does get Gastro Acid, which is very useful against certain teams. Like going against like Senpai's team with the Regigigas would have been really good to get rid of the the Weezings neutralizing gas and then reproc the slow start. But overall, like a Snarl as well and Breaking Swipe. So it has like a couple options for helping. But overall, I kind of felt like Gengar because he needs. I looking at his team, I think he needed a couple more supports, and I felt like Gengar kind of helped with that support. But I could be completely wrong. I don't go against Popos at all this season, but I mean Gengar kind of had more support options for him. I felt than Naganadel, and it gave him that Ghost type, which he kind of lost out on.
Yeah. What did you think about the recent Celesteela pickup for Kartana?
I don't know. Again, it's one of those things where it's like I almost feel like that's a neutral change. Celesteela I liked a lot. I like a lot because it's like its stats are kind of neutral, so it's really hard to tell what he's going to have boost on it. Could be special, could be physical, attack or defense, either which way. But the Kartana is kind of a one-trick pony. You know what's coming in with, but it does its one trick really well. And if it Dynamaxes, you're still going to be in trouble. It's fast. It hits hard. But you know what? I feel like Celesteela does offer a little bit more of that support that he might have needed.
Yeah, I agree. Kartana not really known for being a support mon. Celesteela can be a support mon, and then Celesteela is also a mon that doesn't need to be Dynamax to excel. And it has it's very annoying. It can stick around, and I personally think that the Celesteela pickup was a positive change from the Kartana. He already has some really hard hitters, but having Celesteela, and Celesteela hits hard as well. I mean, I believe it's still over 100 base attack and 100 base special attack. I'm pretty sure, and he could set up his Celesteela so that it actually boosts its attack or boosts its special attack with a beast boost instead of a defense or special defense. I feel like you just don't know what the Celesteela set will be each week going into it. Whereas a Kartana, you can kind of predict. It's very one note.
Yeah, all of that is true, but I really wish he had made that trade one game earlier. Because the Kartana was just much harder for me to deal with relying on Feeney the way that I was
for sure.
That game.
I could definitely see that.
Much better.
All right. But yeah, overall, what did you think overall? Do you think this was a positive change on the team, or a negative or neutral change?
Positive. I do think that the loss of support from Gengar and the gaining of support from Celesteela kind of balance each other out, and he's basically kind of shuffling around similar team roles between different typings.
How about you, Toast?
I would lean more positive than I would say neutral. Just because like the Gengar support, as useful as it is, and I think it would have been really useful on his team. I feel like the Celesteela's kind of support is going to balance that out a little bit more. The Naganadel, I think it's good. I don't think it's amazing, but in the replacement of Gengar and then picking up the Celesteela, you know what? He can also do Sludge Wave Freely next to Celesteela. I mean, you could do that with Kartana and have a lot of pressure, but also having that bulky Celesteela. Yeah. I mean, both get Beast Boost. Both can boost up stat that you might not be expecting.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think this is just slightly positive, but I do agree with Red Side that it does feel like it's just kind of shifting pieces that have similar qualities or similar purposes around a little bit. I think having access to two Ultra Beasts, two Beast Boosts, is huge, and I think that will play a role definitely down the road, and it's completely it could steamroll a team pretty easily if set up. So let's go to our next team. Our next team are the Kung Fu Urshifus, and this is coached by Xerxes Khan. This team has made 2 changes throughout the season. The first change was dropping Snorlax Gmax for Duraludon Gmax, and I know our buddy Rhett here ended up grabbing that Snorlax pretty soon. And
yeah, I was real happy to see that particular transaction go through.
Yeah, and his second transaction was dropping Mantine for Swampert. We'll start with Toast this time. Toast, what did you think about these 2 changes?
So, I mean, Duraludon is very good for dealing with redirection. Although I will say, Gmax Duraludon, I don't think is anywhere near as good as just normal Duraludon. Draining PP, it can be useful against certain mons. I mean, overall, I'm gonna say it's more. I want to say it's negative. Does he Porygon Z2 for Trick Room? Yeah, I'm gonna say negative there. I think Porygon 2 being a reliable Trick Room setter, and he has quite a few mons for Trick Room. Oh, that's a rough one because I think Snorlax would have, especially with all the redirections he has, I think Snorlax would have really appreciated the Trick Room over the Duraludon.
Yeah, I agree with that. He has one of the best, arguably one of the top 2 Trick Room setters in Porygon 2. His other tier 1 is a Marowak, a Alolan Marowak, which is also really good in Trick Room. One of the better Trick Room users, and Trick Room Pokemon. I think the Snorlax Gmax fits better on his team. The change between Mantine and Swampert, I don't think I agree with this. Mantine covers the Marowak with its water absorb. Yeah, and it also covers it with the flying typing for the Marowak as well, as like a free switch in, or even a bait. So I think, in my opinion, I think both of these are actually negative. So overall, for me, I think it was a negative change on this team. What about you, Rhett?
I would agree. I mean, I couldn't believe my luck when Snorlax became available again, because that was exactly what I needed for my team. And Duraludon Gmax is just, as Gmaxes go, I think it's one of the few times where, as Toast said, you're actually worse off than if you didn't have the Gmax. And the other thing that Mantine brings to the table over Swampert that I like is it does have access to Swift Swim. So it just feels like there's a lot more options with it.
Yeah, Swampert only has that Torrent and Damp.
Yeah, and he didn't need the electric immunity. I don't know.
Yeah, the Marowak covered the electric weakness, and then and he had the Prankster Thunderous to set up Rain Dance if he ever did want to do anything with Swift Swim. So I think the Mantine I think had actually better synergy with the team. But he's doing well during this season. So clearly the Swampert is working in some fronts. So but yeah, in my opinion, I think overall negative changes. Our next team isn't a great team. Let's just be a little, let's be light on them. So our next team are the Pittsburgh Steel types. They're coached by Rhett, who's one of the admins for the VBA.
Who's Rhett guy?
So Rhett has made 3 changes this season. The first being dropping Ferrothorn for Cobalion, dropping Toxtricity Gmax for the Snorlax Gmax, as mentioned just before, and dropping Sliggoo for Pangoro. So I agree wholeheartedly with the first trade, with the Ferrothorn for Cobalion. I thought that was a big switch, and I thought it was a really smart switch.
I'm not talking to you anymore about that, right?
Having to prep for beat up with the Persian, the Alolan Persian, it's a pain in the head, and he's utilized the Persian really well, and he tricked me into thinking whether he was going to set up beat up or not with the Cobalion. So just having the Cobalion on the team as an additional option, as such a threatening option, makes it really difficult to prepare for. And he can just roll teams if he does get it set up. The Snorlax switch I thought was really good as well. It gave him a lot more bulk on the team, and the having access to Belly Drum to just completely roll, or running Thick Fat to just stall out Thick Fat with a decent attack stat to outlast certain mons and to just chip away and annoy. The Sliggoo for Pangoro, I thought that was positive. Gives him another parting shot user. I think the best change was for the Cobalion, in my opinion. What about you, Mr. Toast? What do you think?
The Toxtricity for the Snorlax. The only Trick Room setter you have is the Mr. Mime, if I'm not correct. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think I like Snorlax. I think it can work outside of Trick Room well, but you do need support. So I think in one sense, I don't feel like it synergizes as well on your team, but you do have protection with Tapu Fini. And Mr. Mime is going to be the only way to set up that Trick Room. I'm going to say it's more neutral there. Not because I think it's a bad pickup. I think it's better than Toxtricity. I don't really know what else you'd be able to grab.
The Snorlax adds that threat because, like Cobalion, it has a way to just completely roll teams if you let it get Belly Drum up. So it's another thing that you have to prep for. You have to be ready for to stop, whether bringing out a fake out user or taunt user or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And again, like I don't necessarily, I think it's still better than Toxtricity. So I'm gonna say it's a slight positive. I guess just to me, I'm struggling to see like with the Trick Room
synergy wise, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be harder to support, but also looking at the Gmax tier list, it's like what else are you gonna pick from Gmax if you want to get rid of Toxtricity? And you can use Snorlax without Gmaxing it at all. So I think it works better outside of Gmax, not outside of Gmaxing, but it's a good mon regardless of whether or not you max it or don't max it.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to say that's more positive. And then Sliggoo for Pangoro. I think Pangoro is a way better pick than Sliggoo. I don't think Sliggoo had a lot of options. I mean, it's going to be bulky with the Eviolite. I have a feeling you probably were hoping to maybe do a weakness policy strat with it. I might be wrong there. With like the Ice Shard from Mr. Mime.
Oh gosh, that would have been crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if Strength Sap would work on it, because if you did the Sap Sipper.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking the Sliggoo is good because it covers the Fini for the grass coverage. But I mean, Snorlax, Cobalion, both of them. Snorlax is just naturally super bulky, and then Cobalion resists grass. If I remember,
it does. Yeah.
It does. Yeah. So I think it all works.
I think the Pangoro thinks really positive. I think the Cobalion is really positive because it does give that threat of something that you have to prepare for on your team, which thanks. And then the Lax is the one where I think it is a positive change. Do I think it's the best fit for the team? No, but I think overall it's way better than the Toxtricity. I could be wrong. I know Toxtricity is also really good with Scarf and everything like that, but I do think you do have enough support for the Snorlax to make it work. And you might be able to catch someone off guard with the Trick Room with the Mr. Mime, because they're not going to be expecting it. It's just, I think Mr. Mime's base 100 speed.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, again, it's kind of one of those things when I use Mr. Rhyme last season. It's like I used it as like a surprise Trick Room with the Stunfisk.
Oh gosh. Then we'll just go to our next coach and our next team, which are the Portugal Pokeballs. This is coached by Plex 360, and they made 3 changes throughout the season. The first change was dropping Dusclops for Stakataka, and the second change was dropping Braviary for Charizard. And finally, dropping Copperajah for Vileplume. So, Rhett, why don't we start with you? What do you think of these changes?
So the Vileplume change, I actually had a lot of fun with that when doing some prep for their match against Ruby T. There's some fun stuff you can do with the Vileplume. I think that's a positive change. Dusclops to Stack Attacka. I think that's worth it because while Dusclops is more reliable as a Trick Room setter, Stack Attacka can also go on the offense once they're in Trick Room, and that's pretty valuable, especially since he's got a couple of options for things to bring in afterwards if the Stack Attack takes too much damage while trying to set up Trick Room and can't Dynamax anymore. And Braviary for Charizard feels a little bit more lateral to me. It's a little bit tough for me, justify Charizard on the same team as both Incineroar and Gmax Cinderace. Whereas, Braviary gives you the Defiant to scare away, intimidate users. But maybe he was looking for something that could give him a little bit of a sun mode along with the Vileplume. I'm not too sure.
Yeah. How about you, Toast?
I think the Stacka change from the Dusclops is probably the best positive change he has on his team, along with the Vileplume. The only reason why I'm going to say that is I think Dusclops, although is very good and reliable, as you said, Rhett, the problem with Stacka is, do I taunt it or is it going to Dynamax and just attack me and kill me? And that is a question that you don't have with Dusclops. It's like, if you can taunt it. You know what it's going to try and do. It's mainly support. But if you try and taunt this Stacka and Dynamaxes and just attacks, you just give a free turn for it to attack you. I think that's actually a little bit scarier because you can go more with the straight offense. I want to say he has something with After You, but I don't think he does.
I think Togetic gets it right.
Togetic? Vileplume? Vileplume, yeah. So right there, I think the Stack Attack and Vileplume, that actually, if he had a better reliable way to set the sun, would be really good. Or if his opponent set the sun, it'd be really good because then he wouldn't even need Trick Room. Overall, I think the Stack Attack was a really good addition to his team. And actually, with that, the Vileplume, I don't think Copperajah is really that good. You don't want to Dynamax it. It loses that Sheer Force ability. I think it's Sheer Force, right? Or am I thinking something else? Yeah, it's Sheer Force. The Charizard, I'm going to say, is probably more negative. You lose the hard Tailwind. You have to Dynamax it if you want that fast speed. Although it is slower than Charizard, I get the idea because you probably need more special attacking mons, and Charizard looks kind of good. But it's like, you're going to be setting a lot of rock on his team, looking at the Crustle, looking at the Stack Attacka. So it's like you're hurting your Charizard in that sense because you're going to be taking that chip damage. You're going to be, essentially making rock types bulkier against you. Charizard wants that sun. And I just don't really see, like, if he had a beat up user or a justified user, okay, it'd work good. I think Zard is the odd man out here. But I think the Vileplume and the Stack Attack were both a really good choice because he does get the Pollen Puff as well in Vileplume, which can heal the Stack Attacker.
Yeah, I think so. I did talk to Plex early on in the season, and his biggest issue is that he drafted 3 Eviolite users, so he needed to get rid of something. And I think that was what drove him to trade the Dusclops. So I think the Dusclops to Stacka is a good change. Stacka has more options versus Dusclops, although Dusclops is much more reliable as a Trick Room setter. He also has a somewhat reliable Trick Room setting strat, which is the Copycat Espeon with the Stacka to get the Trick Room off almost guaranteed unless it gets faked out or whatnot. And the Braviary, in my opinion, Braviary to Charizard is pretty neutral. Braviary has the Tailwind, as mentioned previously, and his team is mostly physical as well, so it could potentially prevent someone or stop someone from bringing an Intimidate user. I think the Vileplume replacing Caparajo was a really good trade because I got wrecked by Vileplume. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, in my opinion, overall, I think it was a positive change to the overall makeup of the team. All right, we're almost done. Let's go to our team 13, which is Ruby T. Ruby T, who is coach of the Sussex Sableyes, and they are currently the #1 rank in our league right now. After week 6, I think we're still waiting on one match potentially at this current moment, but they are holding a pretty resounding lead right now. They are undefeated. So he has made 2 changes this season. He has traded Tangela for Drapion, and then he swapped that Drapion out for the Miltank. So let's start with Utos this time. What did you think about the 2 changes?
He loses the Rage Power off the Tangela. Now, granted, it wasn't exactly the biggest specially defensive mon, but kind of losing that trait, Rage Powder is it hurts a little bit because he doesn't have a lot of redirection, but then again, I don't have a lot of redirection, and he's doing way better than me, so I can't really say too much. I do like Drapion a lot. I do think it offers a bit. It does get the battle armor, it gets the sniper, it doesn't get focus energy. It only has the one weakness to ground, which he does actually have a few ground weaknesses in the Ninetales Togetic, not Togedemaru, and Turtonator. Rotom if you put a Iron Ball on him, or use Gravity.
Right.
Yeah. So
if you draft that G-Max Orbeetle to counter his team.
Yeah, anyone who's listening, week 7, go for Orbeetle. You're up against so right there, that the train, I don't like the the Drapion for the Tangela actually, but I do like getting rid of the Drapion for the Miltank. I do think Miltank's kind of cool. I think it's fun. It gets Steel Roller. It can get rid of terrain that might be annoying him because he's not going to be setting up grassy terrain himself with the G-Max Venusaur. It gets Sap Sipper, which he doesn't protects. Actually, no, that protects Barbaracle and Wishcash. Okay, you know what? Miltank makes sense, 100% sense. I'm not questioning anything else. I'm out.
So I've actually I talk with Sam a lot about his team comps, and he kept trying to use Drapion, and it just in prep it just kept not being what he needed, and I think eventually he just decided that it just wasn't working out. So that's why he decided to drop it after having picked it up. It was a little bit more spaced out, at least, than the Senpai 1 week without.
Yeah. I think Miltank is a much better pick over Drapion. Miltank has a lot. I mean, it's a decent hitter. It has a pretty decent attack power, and it has really good bulk as well. And then coupled with its 3 abilities, which all 3 are really good, it's one of those Pokemon where if you prep against it, you don't know which ability they're going to bring. You're not 100% sure, and I think that's very big. It can stick around because it has the Milk Drink. It has Normal Stab. I do think dropping Tangela wasn't a great option since you do lose access to Sleep Powder as well as the Rage Powder. But overall, I think this is edged for a positive in my opinion.
A very strange positive.
Yeah, yeah. It went from a negative to a positive, but it's in that same slot, that one
Yeah.
tier 3 slot.
I mean, he doesn't have a lot of mons. I think he'd want to change in the first place anyway. The other thing is Miltank also offers support with the heal bell as well, which is going
That's
to get
true.
like protect anything that might get burnt, or poisoned or slept or anything like that. So I mean, against a Spore mon, it's going to be good. Against anything that wants to apply status, it's going to be good. And it does protect his Barbaracle and Wish Cache, as we know he really likes to use. And I appreciate the Wish Cache use. I like Wish Cache a lot.
Yeah, and he's gotten a lot of out of Wish Cache.
All right, let's move on to our next team. Our next team are the Westside Weezings. This is coached by our buddy Rolo, and he has made 3 transactions this season. One controversial one. Well, I guess slightly controversial. So his first drop was dropping Goodra and picking up Noivern. The second transaction was dropping his Metagross and picking up Cinderace. Third and final transaction was dropping Electivire for Lucario. So I think, in my opinion, I think dropping Goodra for Noivern was really good. Noivern is really fast. It's a reliable Tailwind user. It hits decently hard with Life Orb. It has pretty good coverage options as well. It gets access to Energy Ball, I think Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, and Dragon and Flying Stab is always good. And he's been utilizing it in a way where he Dynamaxes it pretty often as well. And he's shown that he can get wins with a Dynamax Noivern. Metagross for Cinderace, I don't know if I agree with that one. Prepping against Cinderace is, in my opinion, prepping against Cinderace is harder than prepping against Metagross, just because Cinderace's Libero ability makes it really hard to predict. So maybe that is a positive, in my opinion, then. I do think dropping Electivire for Lucario is a negative, in my opinion. It does give him access to beat up Justified shenanigans, but he doesn't have an electric type on his team. Electivire is also an electric immunity for the Blastoise as well. So I think that was a negative, but overall, in my opinion, I think probably just slightly positive, close, somewhere between neutral and slightly positive on the overall makeup of his team. What about you, Rhett? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Noivern is a huge step up over the Goodra. Goodra's really good, but easier to prep for. The Noivern has more options, and you just have you just have to think through its. You don't see it coming the way you do Goodra. Plus the fact that he doesn't really have a great option for setting up the Goodra with priority grass moves. And Metagross, I think Metagross Cinderace is fairly even. I didn't really expect Metagross to get dropped. I would have been. I thought maybe dropping something else for Cinderace would make sense, but there's not that much else to drop.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. He's also, this is one of the Rolo is one of the few teams or a few coaches that actually went with just one tier 1, and he opted out to go with the 2 additional tier 2s and the 2 additional tier 3s. So Metagross was his only tier 1 Pokemon, and switching it out, I mean, it changes your plan for your team completely at that point.
I'm gonna actually say I think the Metagross for Cinderace originally, I thought like back when he made it was negative, but Cinderace is always a pain to prep for. And I feel like Metagross needed a lot more support than his team could support it with, where the Cinderace doesn't need that support. I mean, now he could use that eject button Cottony with Cinderace a little bit more reliably without having to scarf the Darmanitan, because it's just such a fast Pokemon. I feel like Metagross, kind of, it's really good, but it wants some support. It wants some like reliability with it. And I mean, even with the Clefable follow meing, it's not going to protect it from an earthquake. I'm going to say I think the Cinderace is just, I think, better off than the Metagross. I think he's been using the Noivern really well. I think, again, I agree with the whole it's a reliable tailwind setter. You know, when he Dynamaxes it, it's another way to get that speed control. Goodra, you know, I don't think really fit his team as well, and it just kind of left his team in a real middling speed without any way of controlling that speed, because Musharna was his only Trick Room setter, because I don't think Spiritomb gets it. And then, you know, the Electivire to Lucario, I don't really agree with that one. As you said, he does have a beat-up user. The problem is that beat-up user is slower than Lucario, so you'd have to Scarf it to be faster.
Right.
And then Lucario is really frail. It's
Lucario is worse Cobalion when it comes to beat up strats.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
like
it has a special attack option, which I think is actually fairly nice for it. Because he could still do Cottony Fake Tears with Lucario's special Lucario. But like I feel like Electivire is just better off. Just because it does have a wide variety of moves. It has that motor drive ability, but it gets Vital Spirit if I'm not mistaken. And as you said, it protects the Blastoise, where you can actually swap it in on an electric type move. I mean, I think Lucario is the most negative thing. So I'm going to say, you know, this was, definitely more on the positive transaction.
Okay. Sounds good. And let's move on to our final team. This team is probably the only team in the league worse than the Pittsburgh Steel types. That's the Worcester Stunfisks.
I agree.
This is this team is coached by Toast, and he has made 3 transactions this season. Toast has switched out Crocodile for Buzzwole. He has switched out Glalie for Galarian Linoon. And his final transaction is actually switching out Azelf for Garchomp. What do you think, Rhett? Any thoughts?
Actually, all of these were positive changes. Buzzwole hits so hard, and it gives him it's just a little bit more offensive than Crocodile, and I think it ends up filling that role a lot better. Glalie, Linoon has such an incredible move pool that the options that you give yourself with Linoon, I think, are just way better. And, you know, we've talked already a little bit about how Azelf, while it has a really good move pool and it's a good Pokemon, it was just kind of failing to perform for him the way he needed it to. And I'm excited to see what Garchomp does for him.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. I think I'll start with the Azelf change. I think Azelf had the same issue. Well, actually, Toast mentioned this earlier during my analysis of my team. Azelf has the same issue when prepping as the Latios, where it has an amazing move pool and all these options, but when it came down to it, I don't know if it was the team comp or whatnot. It just didn't have enough offensive power, at least during calcs, to do what Toast probably wanted it to do, and it also is pretty frail. So I think Garchomp is a huge plus. It gives him a strong physical stab ground attacker, as well as a stab dragon attacker. And Garchomp is fast with the 102 base speed to outspeed all the plentiful base 100 speed statters, and it can boost its bulk with max quake, drop the attack on the opponent with the max dragon. It just hits like a truck. The Lununa Galar I'm sorry, Glalie to Galarian Lanoon. I totally agree with Rhett. Just has a large move pool. It's fast. We've seen Toast scarf it to make it even faster with the Icy Wind stuff. And it also gets access to Switcheroo as well, which we've also seen that get run. Crocodile to Buzzwole. So Toast and I talk pretty often about draft, and I thought this was a really big change. And I had mentioned to him, like, being the opponent and going up against Buzzwole and Xurkitree next to each other is very daunting. You have a crazy physical attacker and a crazy special attacker. One of them's going to get a KO on you, and one of them is going to get a boost right there and then. And they can just potentially just roll. Xurkitree has access to speed control as well. So I think Buzzwole and Zerk together, and now actually with the Garchomp as well, I think that core is very, very strong.
Yeah, and the other thing about Garchomp is that you can never go wrong with fast rock slides.
Yes, very true. And you also can never go wrong with Sandveil. Yeah,
I'm
so
gonna correct you both on that. With my luck, it's probably gonna go wrong because I'll miss both rock slides,
and you'll get hit
and I'll
by
get flinched.
you'll get hit by all the guillotines and the fissures, even in Sandveil. Yeah, but yeah, I think Rhett and I probably it sounds like we both agree that these all three were very positive changes, and I think it helps the team makeup overall.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do a quick like rundown. Like I'm not gonna lie, I kind of have buyer's remorse with Glalie for Lanoon. I do like Lanoon. I would have picked it up regardless. I just might have switched out the Drizzile over the Lanoon. Over the Glalie, because the Glalie did give me that inner focus ice shard. But overall, yeah, no, I personally like my Lanoon pickup.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's all our teams. So for those that stuck around to watch this whole video, thank you. And otherwise, I'm gonna put timestamps in the description for each team if you want to just see certain teams, what we thought. Thank you to all the coaches for being very respectful towards one another towards the season. I know we've had some issues, this being our first official season of the VBA. We are going into week 7. We're almost done with the regular season. The teams are finalized and locked in now. So I'm very excited to see what everyone's going to do with their now locked in teams. And I want to thank Toast and I want to thank Rhett for joining me on this video with their insight instead of me talking to myself. But yeah, anything else, guys, before I close it out here?
Check the description for links to Toast and my YouTube channel.
Yes.
Oh, you're just forcing that on him.
Check the description, guys.
I forget to do that all the time.
Yeah. All right.
I'm
All right.
a terrible YouTuber.
Sounds good. I'll make sure to do that. Have a good one, guys, and
right.
Good luck to all the coaches on the rest of your season. Thanks, everyone.
Don't listen to anything I said.
Bye.